Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by saying you have so much fun at your business meeting. We clearly have a lot to learn at NAIS. I'm delighted by the invitation, and I want to thank Kirk and Laurie, who are wonderful partners with NAIS, not only in thinking about services that we can jointly offer, but really to think about the future of independent schools. As Kirk said, this has been quite a year, and I know when I talk to heads, many of them say, I feel like I've been thrown so many things this year. It often feels like being in a game of asteroids that keeps on getting quicker and quicker and quicker. But I am delighted to be here to share with you what NAIS is up to, and hopefully to hear from you how we can better serve you. It's, as I said, an interesting year, and I think there's so many new things that we have to deal with. We have a new generation, Generation Z, in our school. We're dealing, all of us, with the fast pace of technology and how that has changed so many things for both the better and the worse. As Kirk mentioned, Mother Nature has certainly shown her force this year, but it has done much to build community. I speak quite often to the schools in the Caribbean, and despite so many of them not having power and really struggling to get back on their feet, it's amazing the community that has emerged there, as well as in California for the schools who are really struggling to get back into shape after so many fires. And for many schools, this has been a few years of struggle of enrollment as we have changing attitudes, changing family perspectives about what makes a great education, as well as just economic challenges. And I also think, for so many of us, we look at, in this society, how do we really balance the needs of serving individuals with that of the collective good? And certainly, I think as we move forward and look to a bright future for our students, that notion of collective good certainly resonates with us at NAIS. I think as a national organization, something that we strive to do is to get out and to really understand you and your needs, because one of the dangers of a national organization is just being too removed from what you see on the ground. So with that, one of our big focuses this year is really to understand our members. And many of you may be familiar with Jeff Bezos at Amazon's letter to his shareholders. And really, since he took the reins, he's talked about the differences between a day one and a day two organization. And what really resonates with me about day one is really this commitment to understanding your members and to be obsessive about that. And that's really the path that we were on, is to understand exactly what you need and how we can serve that need as a national organization. To that end, many of you may have read Clay Christensen's book, Competing Against Luck, which really tells the story of a framework called Jobs to be Done. And we have been using that framework to understand what our members want from us. And their lingo is, why does someone fire you and hire you? And what has been really interesting about that journey for me is it tells us the why. Why do you need what you need in your schools, and how can organizations like SAIS and NAIS really embrace that? Knowing that story, understanding your journey makes all the difference in the world. I often say to people that what's been really interesting about this experience is, having been at NAIS for a long time, I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on at schools, but for me it was like getting that eye test where they're constantly changing lenses, saying better, worse, and all of a sudden I think a lot of your needs came into view. So with that in mind, I want to go through some of the areas that we're hoping to expand to your benefit. I spend a lot of time traveling around the country, and the one thing I hear more than anything else, and in fact many of you may resonate with this in this room, is it sure feels like you collect a lot of data. In fact, there are times when I feel like I need to start a 12-step group for people just to get over that need. Some have even said, after I finish giving the data, I don't actually want to look at it again, so I don't want to use it. And so that has been a real challenge to us, is how do we look at data and research in ways that you need it, not in terms of how we collect it, but what are the key questions that you need to answer? So as a matter of fact, as I'm standing here, our whole data and research team is in Detroit working with the Rewired group, spending 5 days conducting interviews to really understand what are the questions that you want to have answered and how we may do that a little bit more effectively. And our new motto, which we're trying to live towards, is give a little, get a lot. So we're hoping that we can find new ways for you to give less data, but to get a lot more back. And so I hope that you see this evolving over the year. Our plan is to really involve cohorts of users to really think through what could be most beneficial to you. We're also keenly aware that the leadership journey is more difficult than it's ever been before. I often hear from young heads just starting out that it feels like when they are learning everything they need to do well as a head, it's like drinking through a fire hose. So how can we help them really moving from just-in-case training? And just-in-case training is really giving you everything that you possibly may need to know to just-in-time training. So we're looking at that through all of our leadership programs and expanding them to include monthly webinars. And we are developing a lot of new support services just for new heads. We've also partnered with higher ed institutions who offer independent school programs to say, how can we create a real ecosystem around professional development for leaders so that those programs that are degree granting versus regional and national programs, how can they be more of a support system and how can they be more affordable? So we have a group that is made up of schools like Vanderbilt and Columbia and Penn who have joined with us to really look at leadership development and how we might do that more effectively. One of the more interesting conversations we had with them is, should we ever consider a residency for headship, just as there are residencies in other kinds of professions? And we also continually to look at diversity at the top and are just concluding a research study to understand what prevents more women and people of color from taking that top head position, and also what is keeping our boards from being more diversified. So we will be working actively to develop plans around that research. This has also been a year that I think we've seen a lot of governance meltdowns of all kinds, and how can we make sure that our boards have just what they need to operate effectively and are certainly more the air under the school's wings and really moving them forward. So we're just about to launch a new trustee portal where we'll have lots of resources for hopefully every question that a board chair or a trustee might have. We've just launched a governance webinar series. We have new topics every month in a hope that we can actually provide that just-in-time training for trustees. And we're in the final stages of a new search handbook and a new strategy handbook. The strategy handbook really looks at not just strategic planning, but the whole notion of how you approach strategy and what are some options for thinking about strategy amid this changing climate. Something that I would say we have not excelled at as a national organization, although we have many resources, one of the things that came out of this research is that they're not packaged in ways that you can use them. So a huge effort for us this year is to develop toolkits and frameworks that really are more 360-degree resources for you. So they already have templates, connections to experts, checklists, curated resources, all in one place. This was evident for us as we embrace schools that were moving through crises like hurricanes this year. Although we have many resources, there are ways that had they been packaged more efficiently, those would have been in the appropriate people's hands well before these disasters struck. So look for lots of those types of materials coming out from NAIS. As well as really thinking about how we can help you in times of crisis or change. And there have certainly been many of those this year. But we're also looking at change and what are some of the trends that are out there and how can we develop resources that help you think about change very specifically to your type of school. Although there are many national trends that are affecting us all, how they actually affect your school is very specific to your location, the population you serve, and what are the ways that we can support you as you think about what is that next step? What is that next evolution? Because we do have, with changes in the demographic and economic makeup of the country, changes in attitudes about family, and I think a new generation of students who very much are open to experimentation and looking at education quite differently. We also have a changing higher education industry in our country that is moving and shifting in many different ways. And what does that mean for us? So these are just some of the ways that we hope that we can start to be a partner with you in thinking about that change. And we've tried to center some of this in a new service that we have launched called the Innovation Kitchen. And many of you have probably either visited the Innovation Pop-Up Kitchen that we had at the conference last year, or you may have come to one of our summit hacks. And the whole idea behind that is how can we build capacity within our industry to think about innovation or to think about that next step. And so we've had a number of teams from schools that have come together to really think through how do you double down on your mission to really be the best that you can possibly be and think about what that journey is. And we hope that we have developed a framework, which we call the Magnetic Mountain, that you can think about in terms of setting out on day hikes or possibly larger ascents to think about innovation in your school. And finally, we are really looking at how we push more resources out to you. Many of the heads of school, I hope, get our monthly service Looking Ahead, which packages some particular topic and really digs deep into the research around that topic. If there are things that you would like us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. We also are trying to really find ways to push more out to you in terms of understanding what kind of resources NAIS has. I often hear from heads of school that, I don't really have the time to sort through your website and through your many resources. And so we are really developing some personalized tours through those and ways that we can package things that are just for your school. So those are just some of the things that we're up to this year, and I hope that in many ways we can be your entrepreneur for you. As this change unfolds around us, how do we exploit these opportunities? And we would like to support you in that journey and in so many other journeys, both in terms of challenge and opportunity that you face. So again, I thank Kirk and Laurie for the opportunity to be here and look forward to having the opportunity to chat with so many of you here in Atlanta. So thanks for being here and enjoy the rest of the conference.